The fluorescent lights of the Pinnacle Ventures conference room cast harsh shadows across the mahogany table as Elena Vasquez quietly adjusted the stack of presentation folders in front of her. She had arrived 30 minutes early, as she always did, to ensure everything was perfectly arranged for what Marcus repeatedly called his most important investor meeting. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was preparing for a meeting about her own company, yet she sat in the corner chair typically reserved for assistants and note-takers. If you're watching this from Silicon Valley, New York, or any other tech hub, you'll probably recognize this scene. Comment below and let us know where you're tuning in from, especially if you've ever witnessed the kind of startup drama that's about to unfold. The tech world can be brutal, and what happened in this conference room will shock you. Marcus Chin strode through the glass doors at exactly 9 o'clock, his custom-tailored suit and confident swagger announcing his presence before he spoke a word. He barely glanced at Elena as he claimed the head of the table, spreading his own materials over the documents she had carefully organized. The morning sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows seemed to spotlight him perfectly, as if he had choreographed his entrance for maximum impact. Elena watched silently as the investors filed in, each one shaking Marcus's hand enthusiastically while offering her nothing more than polite nods. She recognized most of them from previous meetings, though Marcus had gradually reduced her role from co-presenter to silent observer over the past 6 months. What started as collaborative discussions had evolved into Marcus speaking for both of them, then speaking over her, and finally speaking as if she wasn't in the room at all. The lead investor, Harrison Blackwood from Titan Capital, settled into his chair and opened his leather portfolio with practiced efficiency. His steel-gray eyes swept the room with the calculating gaze of someone who had built fortunes by spotting winners and eliminating weak links. Marcus immediately launched into his rehearsed opening, his voice carrying the kind of confident authority that had once impressed Elena when they first met at Stanford's computer science program 15 years ago. Marcus began his presentation with his typical flair for the dramatic. Our revolutionary artificial intelligence platform represents a paradigm shift in how machines understand human behavior, he declared, clicking to his first slide with theatrical timing. The algorithms we've developed can predict consumer patterns with 97% accuracy, fundamentally changing how businesses interact with their customers. Elena shifted slightly in her chair, noting the subtle inaccuracies in his technical explanations. The actual accuracy rate was 94.3% under optimal conditions, and the behavioral prediction models required specific data sets that Marcus was conveniently omitting from his presentation. She had spent countless late nights refining those algorithms, debugging code that Marcus claimed to understand but couldn't actually modify without her guidance. When Elena raised her hand slightly to add clarification about the technical specifications, Marcus waved her off without breaking his stride. Elena handles our administrative coordination, he explained to the investors with a patronizing smile. She's invaluable for keeping us organized, but the technical complexities are really my department. The investors nodded politely, their attention already returned to Marcus's flashy presentation graphics. The casual dismissal stung more than Elena cared to admit, but it had become Marcus's standard approach over the past year. He had gradually repositioned her from co-founder and chief technical officer to what he euphemistically called their operations coordinator. The transition had been so gradual that most people outside the company hadn't noticed, but Elena felt every demotion like a physical blow. Harrison leaned forward with interest as Marcus dove deeper into what he called his proprietary machine learning architecture. The questioning became more technical, and Elena noticed Marcus's answers becoming increasingly vague and filled with impressive-sounding buzzwords that didn't actually explain the underlying systems. When Harrison asked about the neural network training protocols, Marcus launched into an explanation that made Elena wince internally at its fundamental inaccuracies. She cleared her throat softly and tried to interject with a correction about the actual training methodology, but Marcus cut her off with practiced ease. Elena gets excited about the details, but what's really important for investors to understand is the market opportunity, he said with a condescending chuckle. Let me show you our projected revenue streams for the next 5 years. The other investors smiled politely at Marcus's comment, treating Elena's attempted contribution as an endearing quirk rather than valuable technical insight. She sank back into her chair, Watching Marcus command the room with charisma that masked his increasingly shaky grasp of the technology he claimed to have invented. The bitter irony was that every algorithm, every line of code, every breakthrough that Marcus was presenting had originated from Elena's late-night programming sessions in their home office. As the meeting progressed, Elena found herself reduced to fetching coffee and taking notes like a secretary rather than the technical mastermind behind their entire platform. Marcus asked her to dim the lights for his video demonstration, adjust the room temperature, and even retrieve additional copies of the financial projections from their car. Each request was delivered with the casual entitlement of someone who had grown accustomed to treating his wife as unpaid support staff. The final blow came when Harrison asked about the company's technical roadmap for the next 18 months. Marcus confidently outlined plans for expanding their AI capabilities into new markets, describing features and improvements that Elena knew were technically impossible with their current architecture. She tried once more to provide accurate information, but Marcus silenced her with a look that could freeze silicon. Elena knows I get carried away with the exciting possibilities, Marcus said with theatrical self-deprecation. She keeps me grounded in practical realities, which is why I value her administrative support so much. But the vision for where we're taking this technology, that's something I've been developing since my early days at Stanford. The investors laughed appreciatively at Marcus's supposed humility, completely missing Elena's expression of barely contained frustration. She had been the one burning midnight oil to solve the technical challenges that made their success possible, but Marcus had systematically erased her contributions from the company narrative. The Stanford reference was particularly galling since Elena had graduated summa cum laude from their computer science program, while Marcus struggled to maintain a B average. As the meeting concluded with handshakes and promises of follow-up calls, Elena quietly gathered the materials and cleaned up the presentation equipment. She had learned not to expect acknowledgement for her behind-the-scenes contributions, but the complete erasure of her technical expertise still left her feeling hollowed out and invisible. Marcus scheduled drinks with the investors for later that evening, naturally excluding Elena from what he called the real relationship-building part of their business. Walking to their car afterward, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she had just watched Marcus sell her own creation while positioning himself as the sole genius behind their success. The algorithms running their AI platform contained thousands of hours of her work, her innovations, her solutions to problems that Marcus couldn't even properly articulate to investors. Yet she had been relegated to the role of supportive spouse, applauding his performance while her own contributions vanished into the background. That evening, as Marcus celebrated his successful presentation at an exclusive downtown restaurant with potential investors, Elena sat in their home office staring at lines of code that represented years of her intellectual labor. The computer screen cast a blue glow across her face as she contemplated the growing chasm between her actual contributions and her public recognition. She opened a new file on her laptop and began typing, documenting every technical detail of their platform's development with the methodical precision that had made their success possible. What Elena didn't know was that her careful documentation would soon become the foundation for the most spectacular corporate reversal in Silicon Valley history. The same meticulous attention to detail that Marcus had learned to exploit would ultimately become the weapon that exposed his elaborate deception to the very investors he was trying to impress. 3 weeks later, the towering glass convention center in downtown San Francisco buzzed with the electric energy of TechCrunch Disrupt, Silicon Valley's most prestigious startup showcase. Elena stood in the wings of the main stage, watching Marcus make final adjustments to his presentation slides while hundreds of investors, journalists, and industry leaders filled the auditorium seats. This was the moment Marcus had been building toward for months, his chance to position their company among the tech industry's rising stars. Marcus had spent the previous evening rehearsing his keynote presentation, practicing his gestures, and timing his dramatic pauses for maximum impact. Elena had listened from their hotel room as he refined his delivery, noting how completely he had removed any reference to her contributions from his narrative. In his version of their company's origin story, he was the brilliant sole founder who had single-handedly revolutionized artificial intelligence, while Elena remained an unnamed supporting character in the background. The irony cut deep as Elena remembered the actual origin of their breakthrough technology. The core algorithms that Marcus would soon present to thousands of tech industry luminaries had emerged from her doctoral dissertation research at MIT, refined through months of her solitary coding sessions, and perfected during her previous startup experience that Marcus conveniently omitted from all company materials. She had provided not only the technical foundation, but also the initial seed funding from her earlier venture's successful acquisition. As Marcus strode onto the stage with characteristic confidence, the massive LED screens displayed their company logo alongside his headshot, and the title slide reading, "Revolutionizing AI: The Future of Predictive Analytics" by Marcus Chun, founder and CEO. Elena felt a familiar knot form in her stomach as she watched him claim sole credit for achievements that represented years of her intellectual labor and creative problem-solving. Marcus began his presentation with the polished charisma that had always attracted investors and media attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the packed auditorium, 3 years ago, I had a vision that would fundamentally change how artificial intelligence understands human behavior. Today, I'm here to show you how that vision became reality through relentless innovation and breakthrough engineering." The audience leaned forward as Marcus launched into his carefully crafted narrative, describing technical challenges he had never actually faced and solutions he couldn't have developed without Elena's expertise. She watched from the side stage as he demonstrated their AI platform's capabilities, explaining algorithms with the superficial confidence of someone who understood the marketing potential but not the underlying mathematical foundations. Midway through the presentation, Marcus made a critical error while explaining their neural network architecture. He described their data processing methodology in a way that fundamentally misrepresented how their systems actually functioned, creating confusion that Elena could see spreading across the faces of several technical experts in the front rows. The mistake was subtle enough that most audience members wouldn't catch it, but serious enough to undermine credibility with the AI researchers and experienced developers who could expose the flaw. Elena stepped forward instinctively, her technical expertise overriding her recent pattern of silent acceptance. She moved toward the microphone with the intention of providing a quick clarification that would preserve their company's reputation while correcting Marcus's misstatement. Her years of conference presentations and technical lectures had taught her how to handle such moments gracefully, turning potential embarrassment into demonstration of deep expertise. But Marcus noticed her approach and smoothly intercepted her with a gesture that appeared supportive to the audience while effectively blocking her access to the microphone. "Elena always gets excited about the technical details," he said with a patronizing smile that drew chuckles from the crowd. "She's wonderful at keeping me organized and handling our day-to-day operations, but I think we should focus on the big picture that investors and partners need to understand." The dismissal landed like a physical blow, made worse by the audience's amused reaction to what they perceived as a controlling founder managing an overeager assistant. Elena felt her cheeks burn as hundreds of industry professionals witnessed Marcus reducing her from technical expert to administrative helper with casual public humiliation. She retreated to the side stage, her attempted correction forgotten as Marcus continued with his flawed explanation that would later be dissected by tech bloggers and industry analysts. The presentation concluded to enthusiastic applause, with Marcus basking in the spotlight as journalists and investors crowded forward to schedule follow-up meetings. Elena watched from the shadows as he fielded questions about their technology with answers that sounded impressive but avoided the technical depth that would expose his limited understanding. She realized with growing clarity that Marcus had become skilled at performing the role of brilliant founder while systematically eliminating anyone who might reveal the truth behind his facade. Later that afternoon, Marcus gathered their small team for what he called a strategic realignment meeting in their hotel suite. The group included their head of marketing, their business development director, and Elena, though her invitation had come as an afterthought delivered through their assistant rather than directly from Marcus. The meeting's purpose became clear when Marcus announced his decision to restructure Elena's role within the company. After today's successful presentation, Marcus began with the tone of someone delivering welcome news. "I've realized that we need to optimize our organizational structure for rapid scaling. Elena has done amazing work getting us to this point, but as we enter our next growth phase, I think it makes sense for her to step back from day-to-day operations and focus on family priorities." The other team members nodded politely, though Elena caught subtle expressions of surprise and discomfort on their faces. They had worked closely enough with her to understand her actual contributions, but none were willing to challenge Marcus's authority when his star was rising so dramatically. Elena felt the walls of her professional life closing in as Marcus described her transition to a purely advisory role with no operational responsibilities or decision-making authority. Marcus sweetened his announcement with language about Elena having more time for personal pursuits and family planning, framing her demotion as a generous gift rather than corporate exile. He spoke about bringing in additional technical leadership to handle the complex engineering challenges ahead, subtly implying that Elena lacked the expertise for their next phase of development. The meeting concluded with Marcus scheduling unannounced sessions with team members to discuss the transition, pointedly excluding Elena from conversations about her own company's future. Over the following week, Elena watched Marcus implement his restructuring with methodical efficiency. He scheduled important strategy meetings during times when Elena had personal commitments, ensuring her absence from critical decisions about product development and investor relations. Her access to company systems was quietly restricted under the guise of security improvements, while her opinions on technical matters were politely acknowledged but consistently ignored in favor of outside consultants. The final insult arrived in the form of Sophia Reeves, a 28-year-old Stanford graduate with an impressive resume and striking presentation skills whom Marcus introduced as their new technical advisor. Sophia had genuine expertise in machine learning applications, but her understanding of their specific platform remained superficial compared to Elena's deep knowledge of every algorithm and data structure. Nevertheless, Marcus positioned Sophia as the technical authority for investor meetings and media interviews. Elena found herself relegated to watching from the sidelines as Sophia fielded questions about technology Elena had created, often providing answers that were technically correct but missed the nuanced understanding that came from building the systems from scratch. Marcus praised Sophia's fresh perspectives and innovative thinking, creating an implicit contrast with Elena's supposedly outdated approaches and resistance to change. The cruel irony wasn't lost on Elena that she was being replaced by someone whose expertise, while legitimate, couldn't match her intimate knowledge of their platform's architecture and capabilities. She watched Marcus mentor Sophia with the attention and respect he had once shown Elena, gradually transferring not just responsibilities, but also credit for past achievements. Their company's success story was being rewritten in real time, with Elena edited out and Sophia positioned as the technical genius behind their innovations. During this period of professional exile, Elena began spending more time in their home office, ostensibly working on personal projects while Marcus traveled to investor meetings and industry conferences with Sophia. But Elena's late-night computer sessions weren't devoted to idle pursuits or amateur coding experiments. Instead, she methodically documented every aspect of their technology's development, capturing screenshots of early code repositories, saving email threads about technical decisions, and creating detailed timelines that traced each breakthrough back to its actual origins. Elena's background in software engineering had taught her the importance of maintaining detailed records and version control systems. She applied this same methodical approach to building an irrefutable case for her central role in creating the technology that Marcus was claiming as his own invention. Every patent filing, every technical specification, every algorithm optimization contained digital fingerprints that could prove authorship to anyone willing to examine the evidence carefully. As Elena compiled her documentation, she also began reaching out to former colleagues and academic contacts who could verify her technical credentials and past achievements. Her network included professors from MIT who had supervised her groundbreaking dissertation research, executives from her previous startup who remembered her as the driving technical force behind their acquisition, and industry experts who had collaborated with her on conference presentations and research papers long before she met Marcus. The contrast between Elena's growing collection of evidence and Marcus's increasingly hollow public persona became more stark with each passing day. While he perfected his performance as the visionary founder, Elena quietly assembled the proof that would eventually expose his elaborate deception to the very investors and media figures he was working so hard to impress. She knew that patience and preparation would ultimately triumph over charisma and manipulation, though she couldn't yet envision how dramatically the truth would reshape their company's future. Harrison Blackwood had built his reputation at Titan Capital by trusting his instincts when something didn't feel right about a potential investment. After 30 years of evaluating startups and their founders, he had developed an almost supernatural ability to detect inconsistencies in technical presentations and gaps between claimed expertise and actual knowledge. The nagging doubts that began during Marcus's TechCrunch presentation had grown stronger with each subsequent interaction, prompting him to schedule an unexpected follow-up meeting at their company headquarters. Marcus greeted Harrison with his typical confidence when the investor arrived unannounced on a Tuesday morning, but Elena noticed subtle signs of nervousness that others might miss. The way Marcus's voice pitched slightly higher when discussing technical specifications, the manner in which he deflected detailed questions about their algorithm development timeline, and his increasing reliance on Sophia to handle anything beyond surface-level explanations. Elena watched from her marginalized position near the conference room's back wall as Harrison's questions became more pointed and specific. Harrison opened his inquiry with deceptively casual questions about the company's earliest development phases. "I'm putting together our final due diligence report," he explained with the practiced neutrality of an experienced investigator, "and I want to make sure I understand the technical evolution of your platform from concept to current implementation. Can you walk me through how you first approached the neural network architecture that became your core competitive advantage?" Marcus launched into his rehearsed explanation about breakthrough moments and innovative insights, but Harrison's follow-up questions revealed the superficial nature of his understanding. When Harrison asked about specific mathematical frameworks for their machine learning models, Marcus's answers became vague and filled with impressive-sounding terminology that didn't actually address the technical details. Elena found herself cringing internally as Marcus described optimization techniques that would actually decrease rather than improve their algorithm performance. The conversation took an interesting turn when Harrison shifted his focus to the company's founding timeline and early funding sources. "I've been reviewing your incorporation documents and initial capital structure," Harrison said with the methodical approach of someone accustomed to uncovering hidden information. "There are some interesting patterns in your early development that I'd like to understand better, particularly regarding technical expertise and financial contributions during your startup phase." Elena felt her pulse quicken as Harrison's investigation moved closer to areas that could expose the truth about their company's origins. She had remained silent during most of the meeting, conditioned by months of systematic marginalization to avoid drawing attention to herself. But as Harrison's questions became more specific about technical development and early funding, she realized that someone with his investigative skills might uncover details that Marcus had worked hard to obscure. Marcus attempted to redirect the conversation toward future growth opportunities and market expansion plans, but Harrison persisted with his methodical examination of their company's foundation. His questions revealed a level of preparation that suggested he had been conducting his own research into their background, possibly including examination of public records, academic publications, and professional histories that Marcus might not have anticipated. During a brief break in the meeting, Elena excused herself to retrieve additional financial documents from their office systems. But instead of gathering the standard materials Marcus had requested, she found herself standing in front of her computer terminal, staring at years of archived code repositories and development logs that told the real story of their technology's creation. Her fingers moved almost automatically across the keyboard as she accessed files containing the original algorithms, complete with timestamps and authorship attribution that proved her central role in every breakthrough. The weight of suppressed truth suddenly felt unbearable as Elena contemplated the elaborate fiction that Marcus had constructed around their company's success. She thought about her MIT doctoral dissertation on predictive behavioral modeling, the research that had laid the theoretical foundation for their current AI platform. She remembered the grueling months of coding and testing that had transformed academic concepts into commercial applications, work she had completed largely alone while Marcus focused on business development and investor relations. Elena's mind drifted back to her previous startup experience, the successful machine learning company she had co-founded and eventually sold for $87 million. That acquisition had provided both the initial capital and the technical expertise that made their current venture possible, though Marcus had gradually edited those contributions out of their official company narrative. She had funded their early development from her own resources while providing the technical leadership that created their competitive advantages. The irony of her current situation struck Elena with renewed force as she remembered the respect and recognition she had enjoyed as a technical leader before meeting Marcus. Her previous company had been acquired specifically because of innovations she had pioneered in artificial intelligence applications, achievements that had earned her speaking engagements at major conferences and publications in prestigious academic journals. The contrast between that professional recognition and her current invisibility felt like intellectual suffocation. When Elena returned to the conference room with the requested documents, she found Harrison asking increasingly detailed questions about their algorithm development process and code architecture. Marcus was struggling to provide answers that demonstrated deep technical understanding, often deferring to Sophia for clarification about systems that predated her involvement with the company. Elena could see Harrison's growing skepticism as he recognized the gaps between Marcus's claimed expertise and his actual knowledge. Harrison's investigation took a decisive turn when he asked to review their original source code repositories and development documentation. This request clearly caught Marcus off guard, as he had assumed that investors would focus primarily on business metrics and market opportunities rather than diving into technical implementation details. Elena watched Marcus's composure falter as he realized that their code contained digital signatures and authorship records that could expose the truth about who had actually built their platform. In that moment of Marcus's visible uncertainty, Elena made a choice that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of their company and her own future. Instead of remaining silent as she had been conditioned to do, she stepped forward with quiet authority and addressed Harrison directly. "I can provide you with complete access to our development history," she said with calm confidence that surprised everyone in the room. "Our code repositories contain detailed records of every algorithm implementation, optimization cycle, and breakthrough innovation from our earliest prototypes through current production systems." The room fell silent as Elena's unexpected intervention shifted the meeting's dynamic. Marcus looked stunned by her sudden assertiveness, while Sophia appeared confused about Elena's apparent technical knowledge. But Harrison's expression showed immediate interest as he recognized the opportunity to examine authentic technical documentation rather than relying on second-hand explanations and marketing presentations. Elena continued with growing confidence as she described their technology's development process, speaking with the detailed knowledge that comes from building systems from the ground up. She explained algorithm architectures, optimization methodologies, and implementation challenges with a precision and depth that neither Marcus nor Sophia could match. Her technical explanations were both comprehensive and accessible, demonstrating mastery of complex concepts without relying on buzzwords or superficial generalizations. As Elena spoke, Harrison began asking follow-up questions that revealed his own substantial technical background. His inquiries about mathematical frameworks, computational complexity, and scalability solutions showed that he possessed the expertise necessary to evaluate technical claims accurately. Elena found herself engaged in the kind of substantive technical discussion that she had missed during months of marginalization and professional invisibility. The conversation revealed not only Elena's deep technical expertise, but also her intimate knowledge of every aspect of their platform's development. She could explain the reasoning behind specific design decisions, describe the challenges overcome during particular development phases, and provide insights into optimization opportunities that required understanding of both theoretical foundations and practical implementation constraints. Her contributions to the discussion demonstrated intellectual authority that couldn't be faked or superficially acquired. Marcus attempted to regain control of the meeting by redirecting attention to business strategy and market positioning, but Harrison's focus had clearly shifted toward understanding the technical leadership and development history that Elena was revealing. The investor began asking pointed questions about the timeline of various innovations, the sources of breakthrough insights, and the authorship of key algorithm implementations that formed the foundation of their competitive advantage. Elena's responses to these questions painted a picture of technical leadership and innovative problem-solving that contrasted sharply with Marcus's previous presentations. She described research methodologies, experimental approaches, and iterative development processes with the detailed knowledge that comes from hands-on experience rather than second-hand reporting. Her explanations revealed not only technical competence, but also the creative thinking and persistence required to transform theoretical concepts into practical applications. The meeting concluded with Harrison requesting access to additional documentation, including original research papers, patent applications, and detailed code repositories that would allow him to verify the technical claims and development timeline that Elena had described. His parting comments suggested that his investment decision would depend heavily on his ability to confirm the technical foundations and leadership structure that supported their platform's capabilities. After Harrison left, Marcus confronted Elena about her unexpected participation in technical discussions that he had carefully managed to avoid. His anger was barely controlled as he accused her of overstepping boundaries and potentially confusing investors with unnecessary technical details. But Elena's response carried a new tone of quiet authority that reflected her growing confidence in her own expertise and contributions. That evening, Elena worked late in their home office, preparing the comprehensive technical documentation that Harrison had requested. As she compiled code samples, research papers, and development timelines, she realized that she was assembling not just evidence of technical competence, but proof of intellectual ownership over innovations that Marcus had claimed as his own achievements. The documentation would tell the complete story of their platform's development, including details that would fundamentally challenge the narrative Marcus had constructed around their company's success. The emergency conference call notification arrived at 7:30 on a Thursday morning, marked urgent with instructions for all stakeholders to join within 2 hours. Harrison Blackwood's message was brief but ominous, stating that his technical audit had revealed significant discrepancies that required immediate clarification from company leadership before Titan Capital could proceed with their investment decision. Elena felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety as she realized that the comprehensive documentation she had provided was about to expose the elaborate deception that Marcus had constructed around their company's origins. Marcus paced frantically around their home office as he attempted to reach Sophia, hoping that her technical expertise could help him navigate whatever revelations Harrison's investigation had uncovered. But Sophia was attending a conference in Austin and wouldn't be available for the emergency meeting, leaving Marcus to face Harrison's questions without the technical support he had grown to depend on. Elena watched her husband's growing panic with a strange sense of detachment, recognizing that years of systematic marginalization were about to culminate in a moment of absolute truth. The video conference began with Harrison's characteristically direct approach to addressing complex problems. His tone was professional, but carried an underlying tension that suggested serious concerns about the information he had discovered. "I've completed my technical review of the documentation you provided," Harrison announced as additional investors joined the call, "and I need to discuss some significant findings that affect our investment evaluation and due diligence conclusions." Marcus attempted to project confidence as he welcomed the assembled investors, but Elena could see the nervousness in his posture and hear the slight tremor in his voice. He had spent the morning rehearsing explanations for potential technical questions, but his preparation was based on assumptions about what Harrison might have discovered rather than knowledge of the actual evidence that Elena had provided. The gap between Marcus's superficial understanding and the deep technical reality of their platform was about to become impossible to hide. Harrison began his presentation by displaying code analysis results that traced the authorship and development timeline of their core algorithms. The technical audit had revealed digital signatures, commit logs, and development patterns that painted a detailed picture of who had actually created their artificial intelligence platform. Elena's name appeared consistently throughout the historical records, while Marcus's contributions were limited to business documentation and marketing materials that contained no substantive technical content. The first major revelation came when Harrison displayed Elena's original research from her MIT doctoral program, showing clear connections between her academic work and the foundational concepts underlying their current commercial platform. The mathematical frameworks, algorithmic approaches, and optimization techniques that Marcus had presented as his own innovations were directly derived from Elena's dissertation research completed 5 years before she met Marcus. The academic citations and peer-review documentation provided irrefutable evidence of Elena's intellectual ownership over the theoretical foundations of their technology. Harrison continued his methodical presentation by examining the timeline of their company's early development, revealing patterns that contradicted Marcus's narrative about breakthrough moments and innovative insights. The technical progress had occurred during periods when Elena was working intensively on algorithm development, while Marcus was focused on business activities that produced no measurable advances in their platform's capabilities. The correlation between Elena's involvement and technical breakthroughs was unmistakable when examined objectively through development logs and version control systems. The room's atmosphere shifted dramatically when Harrison addressed the question of early funding sources and financial contributions. His investigation had uncovered banking records and transaction histories that revealed the true source of their startup capital, information that Marcus had carefully obscured through complex corporate structures and legal arrangements. Elena's previous company, Neuronova Solutions, had been acquired by Google for $87 million, providing her with substantial resources that she had used to fund their current venture's early development. Harrison displayed financial documentation showing that Elena's personal investment had provided 93% of their initial funding, while Marcus's contribution consisted primarily of sweat equity and business development efforts. The funding structure revealed that Elena was not only the technical founder, but also the primary financial backer whose resources had made their company's existence possible. Marcus's role as the public face of their venture had obscured Elena's fundamental contributions to both the technical and financial foundations of their success. The evidence became even more damning when Harrison examined their patent portfolio and intellectual property documentation. Elena's name appeared as the primary inventor on every significant patent filing, with detailed technical specifications that demonstrated her deep understanding of the underlying innovations. Marcus was listed as a co-inventor on some patents, but his contributions were limited to business applications and market positioning rather than the core technical breakthroughs that provided their competitive advantage. As Harrison's presentation continued, Elena found herself speaking with growing confidence about the technical details and development history that she had lived through but been prevented from discussing publicly. She explained the challenges overcome during critical development phases, described the research methodologies that had led to breakthrough insights, and provided context for design decisions that reflected years of experimentation and optimization. Her explanations carried the authority of someone who understood not just what their technology could do, but why it worked and how it could be improved. The contrast between Elena's detailed technical knowledge and Marcus's increasingly desperate attempts at damage control became stark as the meeting progressed. Marcus tried to discredit Elena's claims by suggesting that her documentation had been fabricated or manipulated, but Harrison's independent verification through multiple sources had confirmed the authenticity of every piece of evidence. The digital forensics showed consistent patterns of authorship and development that couldn't be faked or retroactively created. Marcus's final attempt to salvage his position involved claiming that Elena's technical contributions were the result of collaboration and guidance that he had provided throughout their relationship. He argued that her apparent expertise was actually the product of his mentorship and strategic direction, suggesting that she couldn't have achieved those innovations without his leadership and vision. But this explanation crumbled under examination when Harrison presented evidence of Elena's independent technical achievements before she met Marcus, including her successful startup exit and recognized expertise in machine learning applications. The moment of complete revelation came when Harrison displayed Elena's name on the original incorporation documents as the majority shareholder and technical founder, information that had been buried beneath layers of legal restructuring that had gradually transferred public recognition to Marcus while preserving Elena's actual ownership rights. The corporate filings showed that Elena retained controlling interest in their company despite Marcus's role as the public representative and media spokesperson for their venture. The assembled investors sat in stunned silence as they realized they had been conducting due diligence with the wrong person for months. Harrison's investigation had revealed that their primary contact and presenter, Marcus, was essentially a frontman for the actual technical genius and majority owner who had been systematically excluded from investor conversations. The implications for their investment evaluation were profound, as they had been assessing leadership capabilities and technical competence based on fundamentally incorrect assumptions about company ownership and expertise. Elena's transformation during the meeting was remarkable as she stepped into her rightful role as the company's technical leader and primary stakeholder. Her responses to investor questions demonstrated not only deep technical knowledge, but also strategic thinking about market opportunities and competitive positioning that Marcus had never displayed. She spoke with the confidence of someone who understood both the theoretical foundations and practical applications of their technology, providing insights that couldn't be acquired through superficial study or secondhand reporting. Marcus's attempts to regain control of the narrative became increasingly frantic as Elena's expertise and ownership position became undeniable. He accused her of undermining their partnership and sabotaging their investor relationships. But his protests only served to highlight his own limited understanding of the technology he had been presenting as his own creation. The investors began directing their questions exclusively to Elena, recognizing her as the authentic source of technical knowledge and strategic insight. Harrison concluded his presentation by addressing the fundamental question that every investor now faced. They had been evaluating an investment opportunity based on incomplete and misleading information about company leadership, technical capabilities, and ownership structure. The real founder and technical genius they should have been working with had been sitting silently in the corner while they conducted due diligence with someone whose primary qualification was charisma rather than competence. The meeting ended with Harrison requesting a complete restructuring of their investor relationship to reflect the actual leadership and ownership realities that his investigation had uncovered. The other investors expressed similar concerns about proceeding with arrangements that had been negotiated under false pretenses about company structure and technical leadership. Elena found herself in the unprecedented position of being courted by investors who had ignored her for months while focusing entirely on Marcus's presentations and promises. As the video conference ended, Marcus slumped in his chair with the defeated expression of someone whose elaborate deception had finally collapsed under scrutiny. Elena looked at him with a mixture of pity and determination, recognizing that their relationship had fundamentally changed along with the power dynamics that had defined their professional and personal interactions. The truth about their company's origins and her central role in its success was now public knowledge among the investors who would determine their future. That afternoon, Elena received individual calls from each investor who had participated in the emergency meeting. They expressed admiration for her technical expertise, apologized for their previous oversight of her contributions, and requested new meetings to discuss investment terms that reflected her actual role as founder and majority owner. The transformation from invisible assistant to recognized leader was both gratifying and surreal after months of systematic marginalization. The revelation phase was complete, but Elena knew that the consequences of exposing Marcus's deception would extend far beyond their immediate investor relationships. Word of the dramatic reversal would spread throughout Silicon Valley's interconnected network of entrepreneurs, investors, and media figures who thrived on stories of corporate intrigue and founder disputes. The truth about their company's origins would become a cautionary tale about the dangers of judging technical competence based on presentation skills and gender assumptions. The formal board meeting convened at 10 o'clock the following Monday morning in Titan Capital's prestigious conference room, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a commanding view of San Francisco Bay. Elena arrived 15 minutes early, carrying a leather portfolio that contained corporate documents she had rarely been allowed to reference during Marcus's reign as the public face of their company. For the first time in over a year, she would be participating in a board meeting as the recognized majority shareholder and technical founder rather than as a silent observer relegated to the margins. Harrison Blackwood opened the meeting with the gravity befitting a decision that would fundamentally restructure their investment and operational relationship. Based on our technical audit and due diligence review, he announced to the assembled board members and investors, we need to address significant discrepancies between our previous understanding of company leadership and the documented reality of ownership, technical expertise, and founding contributions. Marcus sat rigidly in his chair, his usual confidence replaced by the tense posture of someone facing inevitable consequences. The weekend had given him time to consult with attorneys and public relations advisors, but no amount of legal maneuvering could alter the overwhelming evidence of Elena's central role in creating and funding their technology platform. His elaborate deception had crumbled under scrutiny, leaving him exposed as someone who had systematically misrepresented his qualifications and contributions. The first order of business involved formally recognizing Elena as the company's founder and primary stakeholder, positions that corporate documents had always reflected, but which Marcus's public presentations had obscured through careful omission and misdirection. Elena accepted the board's acknowledgement with gracious professionalism, thanking the investors for their thorough investigation while avoiding any hint of vindictive satisfaction over Marcus's downfall. Harrison continued by addressing the leadership transition that would reflect the actual ownership and expertise structure within their organization. The board voted unanimously to install Elena as Chief Executive Officer and Chief Technology Officer, roles that recognized both her technical leadership and her position as majority shareholder. Marcus's resignation from the CEO position was presented as a mutual decision, though everyone understood the inevitability of his departure once his misrepresentations had been exposed. Elena's first act as the officially recognized leader was to address her company's employees in a video conference that included their entire team. The response from their technical staff was immediate and enthusiastic, with several engineers expressing relief that Elena's expertise would finally be acknowledged publicly. Many admitted privately that they had always known Elena was the driving technical force behind their innovations, though Marcus's authority and Elena's own reluctance to challenge him had prevented them from speaking openly about the reality of their leadership structure. The head of their development team, Sarah Kim, spoke for many employees when she described the disconnect between Marcus's public presentations and Elena's actual technical contributions. We always went to Elena when we needed real answers about algorithm optimization or system architecture, Sarah explained during the company meeting. Marcus was great at explaining our technology to investors, but Elena was the one who actually built and refined the systems that made our success possible. Other team members shared similar observations about Elena's quiet leadership during critical development phases, her late-night coding sessions that solved problems others couldn't crack, and her patient mentoring of junior developers who struggled with complex technical challenges. The picture that emerged was of someone who had been functioning as the de facto technical leader while allowing Marcus to claim public credit for achievements she had made possible. Elena used the company meeting to outline her vision for their future growth, speaking with the technical depth and strategic insight that Marcus had never demonstrated. She discussed optimization opportunities, new market applications, and research directions that revealed comprehensive understanding of both their current capabilities and potential expansion areas. Her presentation combined technical expertise with business acumen in ways that impressed employees who had grown frustrated with Marcus's superficial approach to complex challenges. The contrast between Elena's substantive leadership and Marcus's performative management style became even more apparent as she fielded detailed questions about technical roadmaps, competitive positioning, and resource allocation. Her responses demonstrated intimate knowledge of every aspect of their business operations, from algorithm development to customer requirements to financial planning. The depth of her engagement with operational details revealed how extensively she had been involved behind the scenes, while Marcus focused on external presentations and relationship management. News of the leadership transition spread quickly through Silicon Valley's gossip networks, fueled by Harrison's contacts among other investors and Elena's reputation within the technical community. TechCrunch published a detailed article about the dramatic reversal, describing it as one of the most significant founder disputes in recent startup history. The story highlighted the dangers of superficial due diligence and the importance of examining technical credentials rather than relying solely on presentation skills and charisma. The tech blog coverage was universally favorable toward Elena, praising her grace under pressure and her impressive technical achievements, while criticizing Marcus's deceptive practices and systematic marginalization of the actual innovator. Several prominent female entrepreneurs shared the story as an example of how women's contributions to technology companies were often minimized or erased entirely, turning Elena into an inadvertent symbol of broader gender equity issues within the startup ecosystem. Marcus's reputation suffered immediate and severe damage as the story gained traction across social media and industry publications. His LinkedIn profile was flooded with criticism from former colleagues and classmates who expressed shock at the revelations about his misrepresentations. Several startup founders shared their own experiences with Marcus's tendency to exaggerate his technical expertise and downplay others' contributions, creating a pattern of behavior that extended beyond his relationship with Elena. The public humiliation was compounded when Sophia Reeves, the technical advisor Marcus had brought in to replace Elena's expertise, publicly distanced herself from his deception. In a statement posted on her professional social media accounts, Sophia clarified that her work with the company had been limited to recent consulting projects and that she had no involvement in developing the core technology that Marcus had misrepresented as his own creation. Elena handled the media attention with remarkable composure, focusing her public statements on the company's future potential rather than dwelling on Marcus's misconduct. When interviewed by technology journalists, she emphasized her excitement about leading the next phase of development and her commitment to building a more inclusive and collaborative work environment. Her responses demonstrated the emotional intelligence and strategic thinking that Marcus had never displayed during his time as the public face of their venture. The investor community responded to Elena's new leadership with enthusiasm that reflected both her technical credentials and her gracious handling of a difficult transition. Harrison announced Titan Capital's increased investment commitment, citing confidence in Elena's vision and expertise. Other investors who had been hesitant about Marcus's leadership style expressed interest in participating in their next funding round under Elena's direction. Elena's first week as official CEO included meetings with existing customers who expressed relief about working directly with the technical expert behind their platform rather than through Marcus's intermediary presentations. Several major clients increased their contracts after learning about Elena's background and her plans for expanding their service offerings. The business momentum validated investor confidence in her leadership, while demonstrating the commercial value of authentic expertise over superficial charisma. Marcus's departure from the company was handled with professional courtesy that reflected Elena's desire to move forward constructively rather than seeking revenge for years of marginalization. She arranged for a generous severance package and positive references that would help him transition to other opportunities, despite having legal grounds for more punitive measures based on his misrepresentations to investors and systematic undermining of her contributions. The leadership transition concluded with Elena's first presentation to their expanded investor group, during which she outlined ambitious but achievable goals for technology development and market expansion. Her presentation demonstrated the kind of technical depth and strategic vision that Marcus had never provided, combining detailed engineering roadmaps with sophisticated business planning that impressed even the most experienced investors in attendance. As Elena stood before the room of investors and board members who now recognized her as the visionary leader she had always been, the contrast with her previous marginalization was profound. The same expertise that Marcus had dismissed as administrative support was now valued as the foundation for their company's future success. The woman who had been excluded from important meetings was now setting the agenda for their strategic direction and growth initiatives. 6 months after Elena's official recognition as founder and CEO, their company secured the largest Series B funding round in artificial intelligence history. The $95 million investment led by Titan Capital valued their platform at over $400 million, reflecting investor confidence in Elena's technical leadership and strategic vision. The funding announcement made front-page news in the Wall Street Journal, featuring a photograph of Elena standing confidently in their expanded headquarters surrounded by the engineering team that had always known her as their true leader. Elena used the funding to hire additional researchers and engineers who shared her commitment to advancing artificial intelligence applications while maintaining ethical standards and inclusive workplace practices. The company culture transformation was immediate and dramatic, with employee satisfaction scores reaching record levels and turnover dropping to nearly zero. The collaborative environment that Elena fostered attracted top talent from competing firms, including several prominent researchers who specifically cited her technical reputation and leadership philosophy as factors in their decisions to join. The contrast with Marcus's leadership style became even more apparent as Elena's team achieved breakthrough innovations that had eluded them during his tenure as public figurehead. Her hands-on technical approach and deep understanding of algorithm development enabled rapid progress on challenging problems that Marcus had never understood well enough to address effectively. The platform's capabilities expanded significantly under Elena's direct guidance, leading to new applications in healthcare, financial services, and autonomous systems that opened substantial market opportunities. Industry recognition followed quickly as Elena's story spread throughout the technology community. Harvard Business School invited her to deliver the keynote address at their annual entrepreneurship conference, where she spoke about the hidden contributions of technical founders whose achievements are often overshadowed by more charismatic partners. Her presentation became one of the most watched talks in the school's history, inspiring countless women and underrepresented minorities who saw their own experiences reflected in her journey from marginalization to recognition. Elena's influence extended beyond her own company as venture capital firms began implementing new due diligence processes designed to identify and evaluate actual technical contributors rather than relying solely on public presentations and media coverage. Several prominent investors cited Elena's case as a cautionary example of how superficial evaluation methods could lead to fundamental misunderstandings about startup leadership and capabilities. Her story became required reading at multiple business schools as an illustration of unconscious bias and the importance of thorough investigation. Meanwhile, Marcus's attempts to establish a new venture met with consistent rejection from the investment community. His reputation for misrepresenting technical expertise and marginalizing actual innovators had spread throughout Silicon Valley's interconnected network of entrepreneurs and investors. Multiple venture capital firms declined meetings with Marcus after conducting background checks that revealed the circumstances of his departure from Elena's company. The technology community's collective memory proved longer and more unforgiving than Marcus had anticipated. The few investors who agreed to meet with Marcus quickly discovered that his presentation skills couldn't compensate for his lack of substantive technical knowledge or authentic innovation. Without Elena's algorithms to showcase and her expertise to rely upon, Marcus struggled to articulate compelling value propositions or credible development timelines for new products. His proposals were consistently rejected as superficial and derivative, lacking the innovative insights that successful startups required to differentiate themselves in competitive markets. Elena's success continued to accelerate as major corporations sought partnerships with her company for artificial intelligence integration and consulting services. Fortune 500 companies specifically requested to work with Elena personally, recognizing her as one of the leading technical experts in machine learning applications. Her consulting fees reached levels that reflected her status as a sought-after authority on AI development, while speaking engagements at major conferences commanded premium rates typically reserved for Nobel laureates and technology visionaries. The ultimate vindication came when Elena was invited to deliver the opening keynote at TechCrunch Disrupt, the same conference where Marcus had publicly dismissed her expertise just 18 months earlier. Standing on the main stage before an audience of thousands, Elena spoke about the importance of recognizing authentic technical contributions and the dangers of allowing charisma to overshadow competence in startup evaluation. Her presentation was met with sustained applause and standing ovations from an audience that included many of the investors who had previously ignored her while focusing exclusively on Marcus. During her TechCrunch presentation, Elena graciously acknowledged Marcus's contributions to their early business development while clearly establishing the record about technical innovation and company founding. Her approach was diplomatic but firm, ensuring that the truth about their partnership was understood without engaging in personal attacks or vindictive commentary. The audience appreciated her professionalism and restraint, which only enhanced her reputation as a leader who combined technical brilliance with emotional intelligence and strategic thinking. Elena's story became a case study examined in venture capital firms and business schools across the country, illustrating the importance of thorough due diligence and the risks of unconscious bias in startup evaluation. Her experience was cited in academic papers about gender dynamics in entrepreneurship and used as training material for investors learning to identify and evaluate technical expertise regardless of presentation style or social dynamics. The lasting impact extended far beyond her personal vindication to influence industry practices and investment methodologies. The transformation was complete when Forbes featured Elena on their cover as one of the most influential women in technology, highlighting her innovations in artificial intelligence and her advocacy for inclusive startup practices. The article detailed her journey from marginalized co-founder to celebrated industry leader, emphasizing both her technical achievements and her gracious handling of professional adversity. The recognition validated not only her expertise, but also her approach to leadership and her commitment to creating opportunities for other underrepresented innovators. Elena used her platform and influence to establish a mentorship program for women and minorities in technology, providing guidance and support for aspiring entrepreneurs who might otherwise struggle to gain recognition for their technical contributions. The program became a model for other successful founders who wanted to address systemic inequities in startup funding and media coverage. Her commitment to lifting others reflected the values that had sustained her through years of marginalization and ultimately enabled her remarkable professional resurrection. As Elena stood in her corner office overlooking San Francisco Bay, reviewing partnership proposals from major technology companies and investment opportunities that reflected her industry status, the contrast with her previous invisibility was profound. The algorithms running on servers throughout their expanded facility represented not only commercial success, but vindication of technical expertise that had been systematically undervalued and deliberately obscured. The woman who had once fetched coffee during investor meetings now commanded respect and attention from the most powerful figures in technology. The lasting consequences for Marcus extended beyond professional setbacks to include personal isolation within the technology community, where reputation and relationships determined access to opportunities and resources. Former colleagues and business contacts distanced themselves from someone whose deceptive practices had been so thoroughly exposed and documented. His social media presence dwindled as engagement disappeared and speaking invitations ceased, leaving him effectively exiled from the industry where he had once seemed destined for prominence. Elena's final triumph came with the announcement that their company would be acquiring two smaller artificial intelligence startups, expanding their capabilities and market reach under her strategic leadership. The acquisitions were funded entirely through their operational success and required no external capital, demonstrating the sustainable growth that Elena's technical excellence had made possible. The deals positioned her company as a dominant force in artificial intelligence applications while creating opportunities for dozens of engineers and researchers who would benefit from Elena's mentorship and leadership. The story that had begun with systematic marginalization and professional invisibility concluded with Elena's recognition as one of Silicon Valley's most respected founders and technical innovators. Her journey from dismissed co-founder to celebrated industry leader became legend within entrepreneurship circles, inspiring countless others who had experienced similar challenges and providing hope that authentic expertise would ultimately triumph over superficial charisma and manipulative self-promotion. The quiet woman who had once documented algorithms in isolation now shaped the future of artificial intelligence while serving as a powerful example of resilience, technical excellence, and gracious leadership under pressure.